All right, so the portion for today kind of jumps all over the place, and I know I'm not a big fan of that. I prefer just doing things in order, so it's easy not to get thrown off. But kind of the algebra teachers all together came up with the plan, so we are going to be covering a handful of things. The first thing we're going to be covering today is the distance formula between 2 points on a graph. Now this is from 5.5, and I don't know if you like labeling like that. Excuse me. But I put this label up here just so that if you guys want to go look it up in the textbook, that's where you can go look problems like that. So 5.5 example 3 is distance formula between 2 points on a graph. And the hardest part about it is just knowing the formula. So you guys are allowed to use your notes and your book and everything on the tests and quizzes and whatnot. So it would be a good plan for you to at least highlight this in your notes, or to make a little marking in your book or whatever it is on the formula itself. But the distance formula between 2 points is, you might have even had this on the geometry. So it's going to be x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And that definitely looks kind of imposing. Looks kind of difficult. So let's say we are given, and I don't need to make a graph just to draw this one. So let's say we are just given 2 points. Let's go with -2, 3, and 2, -2. The hardest part for you is identifying which number stands for what. So if you need a reminder, and this is a great thing for you to write down. The first number is the x, second number is the y, and then this is the first point, so that's what the 1 and the 2 represent. So this is the x number on the second point, y number on the second point. So once you have those set up and labeled, then you kind of just put them in the formula and then simplify it. And that's definitely easier said than done sometimes. So x2 is 2 minus x1, -2, squared, plus y2, which is -2, minus y1, which is 3. And then we're just going to kind of see how this works out. 2 minus -2, and if you need to do that on a calculator, go for it, but it's 4. And then we square that. -2 minus 3 is -5, and we're going to square that. So 4 squared, 4 times 4, -5 squared, 25. That gives us, what, 35, 41? So this would be the length between those 2 points on a graph. And if we put that as a decimal, what is that? Let me just type that one in quick. 6.4. So this is about 6.4. I'm good with either answer. Yes, Jackson, go ahead. Definitely, because they both stand for something. I get what you're saying. So, I mean, you're just basically talking about like scratch work. Square root of 41 is 6.4. This is a square root symbol. And then let me put this little note here, because the mistake that I see often is you'll accidentally make -5 squared -25. Because depending on how you type it in the calculator, If you don't use parentheses, your calculator would tell you it's a negative answer. So do know these numbers down here always have to be positive. Now, theoretically, there's not really anything more to this. What can make it harder is basically the numbers you start with. So if you start with decimals or fractions or something, that's what would definitely make it harder. In that case, I would recommend you guys stick to this formula still, and then use your calculator to help you find answers. But otherwise, it's not going to be any more. It can't get any more complicated than that. The numbers themselves are the worst part. And I would love to have time to have you guys try one of these problems, but we actually have a lot to do today, so I kind of need to push through. But please ask any questions. You know, like if there's something up there you don't understand, definitely ask questions. I'll always pause and wait for questions. So theoretically, I think you've done all this before, but you know, you guys have a lot of time off in between classes. Okay, next portion is from 5.8. This is where I said that I'm not a big fan of it jumping around. The reason they're jumping around, though, is so that the topics are kind of, have a logical order, basically. So this is on writing equations in point-slope form. And if you are a person that writes really slow, do know I'm recording all this, so. Okay, so let's just start with, let's do this one. Let's say you are told the slope is 5/2, and you're given the points -3, 0. Oh, you know what? I didn't even give you the equation, the point-slope equation. I'm not expecting you to remember it. Point-slope form is y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. This is called point-slope form. So the slope is always kind of what's referred to as m. And then if you have a point, this is x1 and y1. And you're basically just going to plug these numbers into the correct spot. So y minus y1 would be 0 equals slope, or m, times x minus x1, which is -3. So minus 0, you don't write anything. And then minus negative, you would write it as plus. So this would be the point-slope form for this problem. There's tons of different ways to write equations. There's standard form, which we talked about a couple days ago. There is point-slope form, and you guys probably remember slope-intercept form, which we're going to do in a minute. There's lots of ways to write equations, and each one kind of has a benefit or a disadvantage. You would use point-slope form if you were given a point and a slope. You would use slope-intercept if you were given a slope and a y-intercept. Let me put one up here for you guys to try to write on your own. So let's just say we'll make one with a slope of -7. And we'll give you the point 4, 2. Why don't you guys see if you can write the point-slope form given this information? And you can certainly kind of duplicate the one above it if you want. Okay. Let me label these things if that's going to help you. So this slope would be -7, so that's m. The first number, x1. Second number is y1. And honestly, we don't even need the ones, but the reason they write those ones there is so that you know it's numbers from a point. Okay, so we have y minus y1, which is 2, equals m, which is -7, times x minus x1, which is 4. And you do not have to change it from here, because these are point-slope form. You're definitely probably the most used to the equations that say y equals mx plus b. That's slope-intercept. That's the next one. These are called point-slope form. So if you are asked to write the answer in point-slope form, it looks like this. Now, I don't want to go too fast. I know I have a tendency to want to just kind of like push on through. Is there something on these two that maybe you want me to explain, like you don't remember from previous years, or maybe you're not sure why I didn't put a number in place of the y or the x or something like that? Okay. Is anybody still writing this? Do they want me to leave it here? Okay, I'll go to the next example. So our next example is from 5.7. There we go. Example 2. And again, the only reason I'm even labeling them like this is so you can look them up in the book if you want to. You don't have to. This is on how to write equations in slope-intercept form. The one you're probably most used to. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And again, I'm pretty sure this is the one you're most used to using. The m stands for slope. The b is the y-intercept. So this is the point that crosses the y-axis. Let's just say you're directly told these two numbers. Mason, do you think you could help me write the answer to this one? If you're told the slope and the y-intercept? So, or do you want me to guide you at all? Oh, go for it. Very close. Very close and basically perfect. The only thing you left off was this x. This x is always going to be in the answer. But otherwise, that was it. That's perfect. That's all you do. So once you figure out the slope, which is m, and the y-intercept, which is 6, that's b, you basically put those two numbers in their correct spots. And then that would be your answer. That was good. Now, since this style of equation is more common, oh, you know what? Let me write it next to it. I don't know if I need to. I'm just going to kind of emphasize it. But since this is more common and more popular, you're going to see it in a bunch more ways, like different ways. So this one you might even be given a graph. Okay, I hope this isn't too small for you. We've got one at 0, 1. Let me use another color here. And at the point 1, 3. So basically, here's a line. I think I can draw this. That's pretty rough, but we'll go with it. So there's a line that goes through those 2 points. We're going to use these 2 points to figure out the slope-intercept form. Now there's basically 2 things we need to find out. We need to figure out the slope, and we need to figure out the y-intercept. Now, out of these 2, one is definitely easier than the other. Nora, I'll let you pick between the 2, but do you think you could help me figure out either one of these 2? Maybe she's not there right now. Honey, do you think you could help me figure out either the slope or the y-intercept? Okay, do you want me to kind of help you and guide you? Perfect, I can do that. So the y-intercept is where this line crosses the y-axis. So what height does it cross the y-axis here? Yeah, no, perfect. It's 1. And that's because it crosses at the point 0, 1. Good, very good. The slope is going to be the harder of the 2. I think I can zoom in. Let me see if I can figure out how to zoom in. I do. I have a zoom in button. It's 3 times. Let's go 4 times. Perfect. Come on. Computer's being weird. There we go. That just makes my drawing that much worse. This was from last chapter. No, that was from the very beginning of this chapter, because that was the video I made, I believe. If you need to find the slope between 2 points, that's where you're going to do rise over run. So going from this point to this point, I went up 2. So I went up 2 spaces. I went over, or to the right, 1 space. So the slope, I suppose I could zoom out now. 1, 2, 3, 4. The slope is going to be rise over run. So sometimes you have to find out one of these answers, and that definitely is more, it's more work. So if I'm looking at this picture, the rise is up 2, so that's positive 2. The run is to the right 1, so that's positive 1. So my slope is 2. I'm hoping me trying to use these colors kind of makes it a little bit clearer, because otherwise, there could be a lot of information written there. So I've got my 2 number answers that I need, and I would write it as y equals m, which is 2, mx plus b, which is 1. I'll leave it there for a little bit because I can see some of you still writing. And there's a lot of info here. I get it. What I will... Oh, go ahead if somebody has a question. Go ahead, Jackson. We have a bunch more problems. I don't know if you were on yet at the very, very beginning when I said we have a lot to go through, so I wanted to get started right away. The reason we have a lot to go through is this is all technically stuff you've learned in the past, so the state kind of expects you to already know it, but I get it that you probably forgot a handful of it, so that's why I'm going over it again. Okay, so there's a third type of this problem, and that's if you're told the slope, but not the y-intercept. Let's say you're told a point. 2, 5. Well, the real issue out of this one, if you were writing point slope for, it'd be super quick, super easy, and you'd be done. But if you are asked to write it in slope intercept form, it has to look like y equals mx plus b. Now, we know the slope, 4. So I can put that number in. What we don't know is the y-intercept. We know a point, but not the y-intercept. So if you remember these or recall these from last year, a point has an x and a y number. What you can do is you can put in that x and the y number to figure out b. So then I would subtract 8 from both sides. And b is negative 3. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the slope intercept answer with the m that I already knew, and then the b I just figured out. So now, this is 3 different ways to write an answer that's in slope-intercept form. It's probably the most common way to write an answer, and so that's why it's shown to you a bunch of ways. And I get it how they can be confusing because you're given lots of different answers, or lots of different ways to do this. I'm hoping that you'll be able to kind of catch on because you've somewhat seen it before. Now, I've got to keep going on because I've got 3 other things to cover, and I don't like having to push on like this, but do know you can ask me questions any time of the day. Like, you could send me a message during the day if you're working on this. You could even come on from 2:45 to 3:30 if you have questions. I will try to leave this one up on top in case you're still writing that down, though. Okay, the next one is on graphing. It's graphing from a slope and an intercept. So let's just come up with an example. We'll just make up some numbers here. Let's say you have a line with a slope of -2. And you are told the y-intercept is 4. So we're going to be asked to graph that. And let me that works. 1, 2, 3. So first thing you're going to want to do is put the y-intercept on the graph. So that's always going to be the first thing if this is what you're going from. So our y-intercept was 4, which means it's going to be right there. If you want to... I've been talking so much today. If you want to label that, you can. You don't have to. I'm just going to leave it off for right now. The second step is to graph the slope from this point. So that means I'm going to start at my y-intercept, and a slope of -2 would be down 2 to the right 1. And that's how I would graph a slope of -2. That's not the right color. -2/1. So my second point would be right here. And then I'm going to use that to make my line, which is super hard to do on my tablet. Now, I think it's very possible you've done a lot of these. So, I'm not going to just drill a million of these into you right now. Good question. Probably not. And the reason I say that is because most people are going to put the negative number on the top. So if you put the negative number on top, then that would make you go down, and then to the right one. If you decided to put that negative symbol on the bottom instead, that would mean you would go up 2 and then to the left 1. So you'd actually still end up at the same line. So you definitely could do that. It's just right and left matters whether it's positive or negative. Go ahead, Jackson. Oh, okay. How do you unmute yourself on accident? All right. That works. Okay. Anybody else have a question? Feel free to ask away. I want to try to make this as clear as I can the way we're doing it. Okay, I'll leave that kind of on the top while I start writing the next one then. Come on. So this is going to sound similar. It's graph using slope-intercept form. The difference is that example we just did was when you were given the slope and given the intercept. On this one, you're not going to be given the slope and the intercept. You have to figure them out. So let's say you're given the equation. So if you have this equation, you have to be able to identify what numbers stand for what. So that 4 and that -3. The 4, the number on the x, is always going to be the slope. So we have a slope of 4, which if you want, you can write it as 4 over 1 for rise and run. The -3 is my y-intercept. Okay, so step 1, I'm going to graph the y-intercept. Well, that's at -3. That's right there. From this point, I'm going to do a slope of 4 over 1. So that means I'm going to go up 4 because it's positive. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to go to the right one because it's positive. So that way we have up 4 over 1. And that would be my second point. We're not too far away from being done. No. I wanted to try to give you some time to work in class so that, that way you could technically finish your homework before you leave or during our normal class period. Now, I'm going to guess for a lot of you, this example doesn't feel much different than the last one. It's just because you're kind of given the same information, just shown differently. The next example is given the information totally wrong. No, I already wrote it. Given the information very different. Now, if you are told to graph with slope and intercept, this is in standard form. So you're going to want to rewrite it so that it looks like y equals mx plus b. So that means we have to solve for y. And this is just trying to give you options. Because if I was given this equation to graph, I would graph it with the intercepts like we did in section 1 or 2, where you cover your finger up on the other term. I would do it that way. But this is some people like to do all of them one way, so this is kind of just giving you options. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. And then I'm going to divide everything by 2. And then this causes my slope to be a fraction, which is okay. I think I can leave it down there. I think I got enough room. I'll make my graph a little bit bigger, make it easier to see. So 4 minus 3/2 x. We need to call somebody. Who should we go? Soren. Soren, how do I know which number is the slope and which number is the y-intercept? Do you remember the setup? Okay. How about this one right up above? How come I knew the slope was 4? Perfect. So down here, the slope should be -3/2. So the negative sign kind of stays with it. But that's the key part. Whichever number is on the x is the slope. So it doesn't actually matter which way you write it. So very good. Very good. The number by itself is the y-intercept. The number on the x is the slope. So I start by graphing the y-intercept first, which is at 4. From that y-intercept, I have to go down 3 to the right 2. And then I would use those two to make my line. Better than I expected, but the last example is going to be similar. But, I mean, that's the whole point why we're doing all these different examples, is because these can all be laid out very different, even though a lot of them have the same information. So this one says using point slope form to graph. So this would be if you are given information that's in point slope form. And I know this is point slope form just because of the way it's written when it says y minus a number equals a number times x minus another number. That's point slope form. Now if you have all this information written from before, I know that this is slope. And then I know these two numbers, y1 and x1. And try to remember that they were being subtracted in point slope form. So this is going to be the 0.11. X then y. So I'm going to graph the point first. The point is 1, 1. It's not a y-intercept this time because it's just a normal point. But this layout works the same way. If I have the point 1, 1 and the slope of 3, well, then I'm still going to go from this point, and I know my line, the slope just tells you how steep your line is. So I know it goes for this spot, and I know it has a steepness of 3 over 1. So I would go up 3 and to the right 1. What the heck? Weird. Okay, I'm hoping you guys stopped asking. I'm hoping that you haven't stopped asking questions because you're kind of being overloaded with information. This is the end of what info I had to give you for today, which I knew there was a lot of. And normally I would prefer to do more examples of each type to try to have you try some and ask you more questions. But I wanted to give you some time to work in class, so this way you have 25 minutes left in the classroom. You should be able to, honestly, you should be able to finish the work because a lot of it is set up very similar. And once you get the idea down, it feels the same.